They say you are too quiet, too intense, too much. You speak, and the room goes silent. Not because you are wrong, but because you are different. You notice things others don't. You question what others blindly accept, and slowly, people begin to drift away. They laugh together at things that bore you. They obsess over drama, trends, and surface-level nonsense, while you are stuck thinking about life, meaning, and death. You try to blend in. You smile when you're supposed to, but deep down, you feel like a stranger among your own kind. And eventually you start to wonder, is something wrong with me? But what if the problem is not you? What if society just is not built for people like you? The German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer believed that intelligence, real, raw intelligence, isolates. That the more deeply you think, the more alienated you become. Because most people don't want the truth, they want comfort. And intelligent people, they threaten that comfort. This video will explore the brutal truth Schopenhauer uncovered, why society rejects the truly intelligent, and why your loneliness might be the highest proof of your mind. It starts early. You are in a classroom, surrounded by kids your age, but you feel off, not superior, just disconnected. While others laugh without thinking, you are lost in thought. Why do people say things they don't mean? Why does small talk feel like noise? Why does it feel like you are always watching life, not living it? This is the first taste of the silent curse that comes with intelligence. Not the academic kind, not grades or awards, but the kind of intelligence that questions too much and feels too deeply. The kind that observes people's contradictions, notices subtle hypocrisy, and finds it impossible to just go with the flow. As you grow older, the disconnect becomes more obvious. You start holding back in conversations. You have learned that honesty makes people uncomfortable, that asking why too many times kills the vibe. So you nod, smile, pretend, because being understood feels impossible. People often mistake you for arrogant, when in reality, you are just exhausted from trying to explain yourself. You are not cold. You have just learned that depth scares people, so you keep your insights locked away. Your questions, censored. Your pain, invisible. Here lies the paradox. Society claims to admire intelligence, yet it emotionally rejects those who possess it in its rawest form. We worship genius in theory, but in real life, the genuinely intelligent are isolated. Why? Because real intelligence does not just solve problems, it challenges norms. It sees through illusions. It questions what others blindly accept, and that makes people uncomfortable. You become too complex for surface-level connections, too analytical to enjoy small joys without dissecting them, too aware to relax. And the emotional cost? It's invisible, but crushing. You sit in rooms full of people, but feel alone. You long for a connection that reaches beyond the shallow, someone who does not just hear you, but truly gets you. But that person never comes. So you begin to wonder, is there something wrong with me? That's the unspoken tragedy. The world does not teach intelligent people how to deal with this type of loneliness. It teaches you how to succeed, how to perform, but not how to exist when your mind is wired differently. So you adapt. You become a chameleon, blending in, dumbing down, learning when to be silent, not because you want to, but because you have to. Because every time you spoke your truth, you paid the price. But deep inside, the weight builds, a quiet sadness, a hunger for meaning, a question, am I the only one who feels this way? You are not. In fact, what you feel, that silent suffering, is not proof of weakness. It's a signal of a rare mind trying to survive in a shallow world. And the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer saw this pattern centuries ago. He didn't just understand your pain, he predicted it. There's a hidden rule that governs most of human society. Don't think too much. Don't question the script. Don't step out of line. Just follow what's popular, say what's safe, and agree with the loudest voice in the room. This is what Schopenhauer meant when he talked about the herd, the tendency of people to surrender their thoughts, not because they are stupid, but because independent thinking is dangerous. And that's why truly intelligent people are feared, not because they are smarter, but because they refuse to worship the herd. When someone starts asking why, the group gets nervous. When someone notices the contradictions, the lies, the blind traditions, the group gets defensive. It's not logical, it's psychological. In every classroom, every office, every community, there's a subtle pressure: conform or be cast out. And intelligent people, by their very nature, resist this pressure, not out of rebellion, but out of curiosity and truth. But here's the uncomfortable truth: thinking differently is not admired. It's treated as a threat, because intelligence does not just question facts, it questions comfort. It disrupts illusions. It shines a light on everything people are trying to ignore. When you walk into a room and say something that reveals the group's hypocrisy, when you suggest an idea that has not been pre-approved by mass consensus, when you challenge the system instead of playing along, you don't get applause. You get labeled weird, too intense, not a team player. Let's take the modern workplace. We say we want innovation. We praise creativity and theory. But in reality, the ones who raise uncomfortable truths in meetings are often sidelined. The employees who question inefficient systems are told to stop overthinking. The ones who don't engage in workplace gossip or fake positivity are called antisocial. In schools, it's the same. Students who follow rules blindly are rewarded. Students who ask too many questions, they are labeled disruptive, not because they are wrong, but because they challenge authority. Even online platforms, where free thought is supposed to thrive, punish complexity. Algorithms reward simplicity, repetition, emotional manipulation. Not nuance, not depth, not intelligence. So, what happens to the truly intelligent in such a system? They learn to hide, to shrink, to wear a mask just to survive. And eventually, society gets exactly what it wants: silent brilliance. Genius locked behind social anxiety. Potential buried under years of self-doubt. Wisdom that's never shared because it's never welcomed. This is the ultimate irony. The world says it wants intelligence, but only the kind that plays nice. Only the kind that does not make people uncomfortable. Only the kind that fits inside a tidy little box. But real intelligence is messy. It does not fit into slogans. It does not care about what's trending. It does not flatter egos. It confronts them. And that's why society pushes it away. To be truly intelligent is to be misunderstood, to be feared, to be alone in a room full of people nodding to things you know are false. It's not just rejection, it's social exile. Because when you can see through the game, you stop playing it. And when you stop playing it, you stop belonging. That's the cost of nonconformity. And for those who refuse to betray their own minds, it's a price they silently pay every single day. But Schopenhauer believed this suffering had meaning. He saw intelligence not as a privilege, but as a burden that few were strong enough to carry. And those who carry it must walk a lonelier path, but also a truer one. Arthur Schopenhauer was not your typical philosopher. He did not sugarcoat reality. He did not promise happiness. He believed that life, at its core, was suffering, and that the more conscious you are, the more you feel it. To many, this sounds bleak, but to those who have lived through the quiet despair of thinking too much and feeling too deeply, it feels honest, almost like someone finally told the truth. Born in 1788 in Germany, Schopenhauer was raised in a wealthy but emotionally cold household. His father was a strict, rational merchant. His mother, a literary socialite who later disapproved of his pessimism. From early on, Schopenhauer felt like an outsider. He observed life with a depth that made him feel more like a witness than a participant. And that's exactly how his philosophy evolved. His most famous idea was this: a man can be himself only so long as he is alone. According to Schopenhauer, intelligence leads to isolation, not by choice, but by consequence. The more deeply you understand life, the more alienated you become from those who live on its surface. At the heart of his worldview lies the concept of the will, a blind, irrational force that drives all living beings. It's not logical. It does not care about truth. It just wants, endlessly, mindlessly, painfully. In Schopenhauer's view, most people are ruled by this will. They chase pleasure, power, validation, not because they have thought it through, but because they are trapped in a cycle of desire they can't even see. But the truly intelligent, the thinkers, the observers, they begin to recognize this trap. They step outside it. They detach. And that's where the suffering begins. Because once you see the world for what it is, a dance of illusions powered by unconscious craving, you can never unsee it. You no longer laugh at the same jokes. You can't participate in small talk that feels hollow. You feel like a ghost drifting through a party that never ends, wondering why no one else notices the emptiness. Schopenhauer put it like this: the more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him. In other words, ignorance is not just bliss, it's belonging. When you start asking deeper questions about meaning, mortality, morality, you lose your place in the tribe, not because people hate you, but because they don't understand you. Schopenhauer did not hate society. He just believed that society and solitude serve two different purposes. Society keeps you entertained, solitude makes you real, and the truly intelligent, they eventually crave what society cannot offer: silence, clarity, and authenticity. This is why Schopenhauer praised solitude not as loneliness, but as liberation. Great men are like eagles and build their nest on some lofty solitude. To him, intelligence was not glamorous. It was a curse that stripped away comfort and forced you into existential exile. And yet, he did not advocate despair. He believed there was a higher way to live, through contemplation, art, and philosophy. By turning your suffering into insight and your alienation into wisdom, he was one of the few philosophers who dared to say, "The pain you feel from thinking too much, it's real. The disconnection you experience when others don't understand your thoughts, it's valid. The sense that something is wrong with the world, you are not imagining it." And that's why his work resonates with people who feel out of place, who sit in classrooms, meetings, family dinners, surrounded by words but starving for meaning. For Schopenhauer, suffering was the price of clarity. And while the world mocks the ones who see too much, he whispered from the pages of his books, "You are not broken. You are just awake." His philosophy was not meant to fix life, but to help us endure it without lying to ourselves. To face the darkness not with fear, but with dignity. Because in the end, intelligence may isolate you from others, but it also connects you with truth, with art, with beauty, with your own soul. And that, Schopenhauer believed, is a higher kind of connection, one that no crowd can offer, and no rejection can take away. Loneliness is often seen as a failure of social life, but what if it's sometimes the price of deeper thinking? Modern psychology is starting to confirm what philosophers like Schopenhauer sensed centuries ago. High intelligence often comes with high isolation. Let's start with the science. A 2016 study published in the British Journal of Psychology found something fascinating. The more intelligent a person is, the less satisfaction they report from frequent socializing. For most people, being around friends boosts happiness, but for highly intelligent individuals, too much social interaction actually leads to frustration, overstimulation, and emptiness. Why? Because the conversations often feel surface level. Because their minds crave depth, nuance, ideas, not gossip, repetition, or emotional noise. They may care about people, but they struggle with the form of connection that society offers. And this creates a kind of cognitive loneliness. It's not just about being alone. It's about being surrounded by people who don't think like you, and feeling more isolated than if you were physically alone. That's where the emotional paradox begins. On one hand, highly intelligent people are introspective. They analyze, reflect, overthink. They live in their heads, sculpting entire universes of thought that others may never see. But on the other hand, they are human. They still crave connection, intimacy, resonance. They want someone who does not just nod, but gets it, who hears the unsaid and understands the invisible. And that's the psychological trap. The smarter you are, the harder it is to find someone who understands your loneliness. This is not arrogance, it's neuroscience. Psychologist Dr. Thomas Suddendorf, an expert in cognitive evolution, explains that our brains evolved in small tribal groups of 100 to 150 people. Our intelligence was shaped by the need to survive and fit into tight social circles. But modern high IQ individuals live in a radically different environment. They process information faster, think in abstractions, challenge norms. They no longer fit the emotional blueprint of tribal belonging. and their minds become evolutionary misfits. The world has not caught up to their wiring, and it hurts. Because deep intelligence often brings emotional dysregulation, not because something's wrong, but because too much is going on inside. Imagine thinking 10 thoughts where others think one. Imagine noticing micro-expressions in every conversation. Imagine replaying one word someone said for hours, wondering what it meant. This sensitivity is not a superpower. It's a burden. It can lead to anxiety, depression, emotional burnout. Not because the world is hostile, but because it's not built to handle people who feel this much and think this deep. One Harvard study even suggested that highly intelligent children often report greater feelings of alienation and existential worry. From a young age, they realize they are different. And instead of being celebrated, this difference is often punished. They are told, "You think too much. Why can't you just be normal? Stop asking so many questions." So they internalize the message, "Maybe something's wrong with me." This leads to internal conflict, a push and pull between self-expression and self-protection. They want to open up, but they have been shut down too many times. They want to connect, but they have learned it's safer to withdraw. And so, they build emotional walls, hoping someone will notice the silence behind them. But most people never do. Even in romantic relationships, this pattern plays out. Highly intelligent individuals often struggle to feel seen, not just admired, but understood. They may come off as distant or cold, but in truth, they are protecting a depth that's been mishandled too many times. It's not that they don't want love, it's that they have learned most people love the idea of intelligence, not the complex emotional reality that comes with it. Psychologist Kazimierz Dabrowski called this phenomenon overexcitability. It refers to a heightened sensitivity in 5 areas: intellectual, emotional, imaginative, sensory, and psychomotor. In simple terms, smart people feel more, think more, and suffer more. And this intensity, though it fuels creativity and insight, also deepens the divide between them and the world around them. But here's the hidden truth. Loneliness does not always mean something is missing. Sometimes it means something is unmatched. A mind that sees through illusions. A heart that won't settle for shallow conversations. A soul that yearns for meaning over comfort. Such a person will always feel a little apart, not because they have failed socially, but because they are wired for something deeper, something rarer. So, if you have ever felt this type of loneliness, not just the absence of people, but the absence of resonance, it may not be a curse. It may be the quiet signal that you are among the few, who are not just alive, but truly awake. You might think intelligence would attract admiration, and it does at first. But behind admiration often hides something darker. Envy. And envy has a strange way of turning reverence into rejection. Most people won't admit this, not even to themselves. But in everyday life, intelligent individuals often face subtle, and sometimes overt, resentment. Not because they are unkind, but because they expose something painful in others. Insecurity. When you walk into a room and speak with clarity, depth, or confidence, some won't hear your words. They will hear their own inadequacy. They will feel outshined, small, unseen. That sting. It's the ego trying to protect itself. This is where the Dunning-Kruger effect comes into play. Named after psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, the effect describes how people with lower ability tend to overestimate their competence because they don't know what they don't know. Now add someone truly intelligent to that environment, and suddenly, their illusion of competence shatters. They are confronted with their limitations, and instead of facing them, many lash out. They call the intelligent person arrogant, cold, weird, thinks they are better than everyone. But the irony is, they never said that. The ego heard it on its own. Because intelligence does not just challenge ideas, it challenges identities. In tribal psychology, this creates a social threat. Humans evolved in groups where acceptance meant survival. Standing out, thinking differently, questioning norms, meant risking exile. So, when someone intelligent comes along and disrupts the group's consensus, it triggers ancient instincts. This person is dangerous. They might tear the group apart, cast them out. And this pattern has repeated through history. Socrates, perhaps the most famous philosopher of all time, was executed for corrupting the youth. But what he really did was expose the shallow thinking of powerful people. Galileo was placed under house arrest for suggesting the Earth revolves around the sun, not because science was offended, but because the Church's authority was. Nikola Tesla died broke and alone. Alan Turing, who helped end World War II, was chemically castrated for being gay and later died by suicide. These were not just stories of misunderstanding, they were stories of egoic retaliation. Because when someone introduces a new truth, they also expose the lies we have built our identities around. And most people would rather reject you than reconstruct themselves. This is not limited to the past. Even today, innovators, deep thinkers, and truth speakers often face shadow bans, not just on platforms, but in real life. In offices, they are ignored. In classrooms, labeled disruptive. In relationships, told they're too much. Why? Because intelligence without conformity threatens the social order. It disturbs comfort. It raises standards. It makes mediocrity visible. And that's unforgivable in a world addicted to comfort and illusion. So envy whispers in silence, and ego pulls the trigger. But here's the paradox. People want intelligence, as long as it does not make them question themselves. They will admire a genius on YouTube, quote a philosopher on Instagram, but sit them across from someone who sees too clearly, feels too deeply, and speaks too honestly. And suddenly, it's war. So, if you have ever been rejected not for your flaws, but for your clarity, it's not because you did something wrong, it's because your presence awakened something others were not ready to face. And in a world driven by ego, that's more dangerous than evil. So, what do you do when the very thing that makes you special also makes you alone? When your mind reaches depths most people never touch, but no one around you seems to care or understand. Arthur Schopenhauer did not sugarcoat this paradox. He did not try to fix it with toxic positivity. He gave a brutal, almost cruel, yet profoundly liberating answer: solitude. Intellectual superiority, he wrote, is marked by a propensity for solitude, not as punishment, but as liberation. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: the crowd rarely understands the individual, and the more profound your thoughts, the more likely they will echo in silence. But to Schopenhauer, that silence was not emptiness, it was clarity. In a world that fears being alone, solitude is seen as a weakness. People chase distractions, constant connection, endless noise. They measure their worth by likes, messages, and attention. But Schopenhauer flipped the script. He said, "The one who can be alone and still feel whole, that is the strongest kind of person." Because solitude is not loneliness. Loneliness is craving connection and not finding it. Solitude is choosing peace over shallow company. It's not the absence of people, it's the presence of yourself. Schopenhauer believed that deep thinkers naturally retreat, not because they hate people, but because they are exhausted by shallowness. Ordinary people are like a clock, he implied, always ticking the same thoughts, repeating the same ideas. But the noble intellect is like a compass, always pointing toward depth, truth, and meaning. And you can't follow that compass in a noisy room. So, what does solitude offer that society never can? Freedom. Not just physical freedom, but mental and emotional independence. The freedom to think without interruption, to feel without judgment, to create without compromise. It is in solitude that great ideas are born. Article philosophy, science, vision. None of these are products of crowds, they are forged in stillness. Schopenhauer spent most of his life in quiet reflection. He was not popular, he was not praised during his time, but he understood something timeless. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free. But here's the real power. When you no longer seek validation, you become untouchable. Rejection loses its sting. You stop molding yourself to fit into places you don't belong. You stop shrinking your thoughts to make others comfortable. And suddenly, that solitude becomes a sanctuary, a forge for strength, a mirror for truth. This is the brutal brilliance of Schopenhauer's solution. Don't beg society to accept your depth. Let it reject you. Let it misunderstand you. Because that rejection is proof of your difference, not your failure. The world does not ignore deep thinkers because they are wrong. It ignores them because they threaten what's easy and familiar. So, If you are misunderstood, if you are left out, if you are labeled too intense, too analytical, too different, Schopenhauer would say, good. It means you're no longer a prisoner of the herd. But solitude is not just escape, it's a reclamation of your mind, of your time, of your energy. It allows you to stop performing and start being. Not who the world wants, but who you truly are. And slowly, as you settle into that quiet, you begin to see what others can't. You notice beauty in silence, patterns in chaos, depth in pain. You stop trying to belong and start becoming. This is what Schopenhauer called the noble intellect. Not noble by birth, but by inner richness. And it's not for everyone. Most will never choose it, because solitude requires you to face yourself, and that is terrifying. But if you are brave enough to walk that path, to sit in silence, to feel the weight of your thoughts, to resist the urge to dilute yourself just to fit in, then solitude becomes power. Not because it makes you special, but because it makes you real. So don't fear the loneliness that intelligence can bring. Let it shape you, let it deepen you, let it set you free. If you have ever felt out of place, like your thoughts are too heavy, your questions too deep, your emotions too intense for the world around you, you are not broken, you are not too much, you are just more aware. And that awareness, that depth, it comes with a cost. Loneliness, misunderstanding, rejection. But here's the truth no one tells you. That pain is not a flaw, it's a sign. A sign that you see what others don't, that you feel what others suppress, that you think in ways that challenge the comfort of the crowd. The very things that make you different are often the same things that make others uncomfortable. So they pull away. Not because you are wrong, but because you remind them of what they refuse to face in themselves. This is the secret Schopenhauer understood. You don't need to change who you are. You need to understand who you are. The journey of an intelligent soul is never linear. It moves from confusion, why don't I fit in, to clarity, maybe I was never meant to inner power, I don't need to. And somewhere along that path, loneliness transforms. It stops being a wound. It becomes a mirror that reflects your truth, your vision, your potential. Schopenhauer once wrote, "Great men are like eagles and build their nest on some lofty solitude, not because they are arrogant, but because they need the silence to see clearly. Because from that height, you are no longer lost in the noise, you are above it. So if society rejects you, let it. That rejection is not a failure, it's confirmation, that you think deeply, that you feel honestly, that you are no longer willing to trade authenticity for approval. Let that be your proof. You're not lost. You're just ahead of your time. And in time, others may catch up, or they may not. But you will already be free. If you have made it this far, you are not just watching a video. You are searching for meaning, for truth, for something real. And I want you to know that already sets you apart. Maybe you have always felt different, like you think too much, feel too deeply, or care about things others ignore. Maybe the world has made you question whether that's a flaw. It's not, it's clarity. Schopenhauer believed that the loneliest paths often belong to the clearest minds. And while that clarity may isolate you, it also frees you. Here at Sifos, this is the space for those who think deeply, question everything, and never settle for surface-level answers. You are not alone in how you think or feel. This channel exists for you. If this resonated with you, subscribe for more deep dives into psychology, philosophy, and the human mind. Share this video with someone who might need it. And if you felt this kind of isolation, tell me your story in the comments. I read everyone. Let's keep building a community of minds that don't fit, because we were never meant to.